I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are interviewing a driver right after a car crash.
Right, like nothing catastrophic, thankfully, just
What?
a fender bender.
Exactly. The dust has settled, the adrenaline is, starting to recede, and you ask them the simplest question. What happened?
And they probably aren't going to give you a physics lecture about tire traction or braking velocity.
No, definitely not. More often than not, they look at you with this completely bewildered expression and say something incredibly simple like, I was confused at that moment.
It's that tiny, almost imperceptible microlapse in attention, because when you look back at the mechanics of a fender bender, it is almost always entirely avoidable.
Yeah, you were rushing for no reason, or I don't know, you decided to change the radio station.
Right, or you were driving while profoundly exhausted. The physical environment didn't suddenly become unnavigable. Your brain's executive function just briefly went offline.
The mind was somewhere else, and the body was left to steer a 2-ton machine. And that incredibly relatable, very human moment of cognitive misfire is, well, it's the foundation for our deep dive today.
It's a great starting point for this.
Yeah, because we're exploring a deeply fascinating philosophical essay from 2011 by Sue Feng. It's titled The Eight Great Confusions of Life. And our core mission here is to trace how this precise mechanism scales up.
Right, the exact same momentary confusion that causes a traffic collision.
Exactly. It doesn't just cause bad driving. In this text, it's presented as the absolute root cause of life's greatest miseries. I mean, everything from ruined careers to shattered relationships.
So we really want to extract the underlying architecture of these traps, so you can spot them before the impact actually happens.
Yes, and the beauty of framing it around that momentary lapse is that it strips away the grand tragedy we usually assign to our failures.
I mean, the central thesis here is that calamities, whether they're physical or existential, they don't necessarily happen because we are fundamentally flawed or evil. They happen because we lose presence.
We just forget to pause.
Exactly. The philosophy suggests that if we can just master the art of the micropause, like literally a fraction of a second of care before we act, we can bypass the vast majority of human disaster.
And the text doesn't waste any time moving from literal physical crashes to the metaphorical crashes we engineer in our daily routines.
Oh, not at all.
There's this whole category of traps here that really revolve around the sheer act of doing, the constant need to be in motion.
It calls out our obsession with affairs and busy work.
Yeah, the first confusion. There's this argument that people ruin perfectly smooth, comfortable, quiet lives by suddenly insisting on standing out or building these grand, sweeping careers.
It's a major critique of manufactured complexity. I mean, imagine your life is operating at a comfortable baseline. You have a routine, you have peace.
Sounds nice.
Right. But then an itch arises. This sudden, unexamined urge dictates that you need to conquer a new market, or you need to become a recognizable name.
And then the ensuing busyness and entanglement don't actually yield a higher quality of life?
No, they just introduce a mountain of new, entirely optional anxieties. You basically trade your peace for a crowded schedule.
I love how grounded the text makes us, too. Like, it doesn't just stay in the clouds of abstract philosophy. It brings it right down to the kitchen counter.
The list of minor disasters is amazing.
It really is. There is this incredibly specific, almost darkly comedic litany of minor disasters that result from this exact type of overexertion.
Oh, yeah.
The text argues that this mind-wandering busyness is the direct cause of being scolded by boiling water, getting shocked by electricity, sprained ankles, bumping your head on a door sill,
Twisting a back, cutting a finger with a kitchen knife.
falling from ladders,
Yeah.
tumbling into ravines, choking on food, catching a cold, or, and this is such a vivid image, falling off a dangerous bridge.
It sounds like a slapstick comedy routine when you compress it like that.
It really does.
But there's a serious psychological mechanism at play here, which is cognitive tunneling. When your mental bandwidth is entirely consumed by the empire you are trying to build or the status you're trying to achieve,
Your working memory is just completely hijacked.
right, you literally lose your spatial awareness. You cut your finger slicing vegetables because your brain is already in tomorrow's board meeting. The physical injury is just a lagging indicator that your mind and your body were not in the same time zone.
Wow, yeah. Which perfectly explains the tragedy of misdirection, the second confusion. If you're sleepwalking through the present moment because you're fixated on a goal, you might wander for half a year or half a lifetime, only to realize you have to turn around.
It's the classic scenario, right? Putting all your energy into climbing a ladder only to reach the top and realize it's leaning against the completely wrong wall.
And the sunk cost fallacy really kicks in there, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The cost of that misdirection is massive. You've expended decades of vital energy moving outward when perhaps the necessary movement was inward.
I do struggle with this a bit, though,
Hmm.
because the underlying philosophy here essentially diagnoses our entire modern hustle culture as a profound delusion.
That's the seventh confusion, ambition.
Right. But, I mean, isn't ambition responsible for every major medical breakthrough, every technological leap, every piece of magnificent architecture we have?
It's a fair point.
If everyone just sat around enjoying a quiet, simple life, we'd still be living in caves.
No.
Is the pursuit of greatness really just a confusion?
Well, that is the essential friction of the text. It doesn't actually deny that ambition builds infrastructure or cures diseases. Rather, it questions the internal cost to the individual doing the bidding.
The personal toll it takes.
Exactly. The philosophy argues that while striving for fame, wealth, or historical glory might leave a mark on the world, it turns the individual's inner life into a fleeting, anxious dream.
It's an energetic trade-off.
Yeah, when your visual field is entirely locked on the summit of the mountain you want to conquer, you become blind to the immediate environment.
You completely miss the tangible world.
Precisely. The text uses this beautiful imagery of missing the quiet glow of moonlight or ignoring the profound, intricate beauty of a single blade of grass.
Oh, that's beautiful.
We often perceive the corner office, the awards, and the legacy as splendor, but through this philosophical lens, that splendor is actually sorrow.
Because it requires you to mortgage your present reality for a phantom idea of the future that, doesn't actually exist yet.
Exactly.
Like running an operating system with way too many background apps open. You think you're successfully multitasking your career, your legacy, your status, but your battery is draining, the fan is screaming, and eventually the system just freezes.
And that freeze is when you drop the kitchen knife or ruin a perfectly good Tuesday.
Right. Or, to shift the focus a bit, it's when you deeply damage the people closest to you.
Which brings us to the invisible chains.
Yes. Segment 2. We move from the physical actions we take in the world to the entanglements of attachment. This is where the philosophy gets incredibly sharp.
Starting with the chaos of our emotional lives, the third confusion.
Right. The text targets romantic love specifically. The pledging of life and death, the braving of fire and water, the tossing and turning in restless nights.
It looks at the intense melodrama we usually associate with romance and asks a deeply pragmatic question. What is the actual utility of all this suffering?
Yeah, like what's the point?
The text points to the classic tragedy of Du Xiniang.
Oh, the story of Du Xiniang sinking her treasure chest.
Exactly, destroying her immense hidden wealth and ultimately herself over a betrayed romance. It uses that cultural touchstone to highlight the sheer destructiveness of emotional infatuation.
It's a total loss of agency. You hand the keys to your emotional regulation over to another flawed human being.
Exactly. The philosophy suggests that people trapped in this kind of intense, dramatic love are suffering from a severe cognitive distortion in that moment.
So what's the alternative? To just be cold and unfeeling?
The alternative proposed isn't to be a robot. It's to possess a fluidity, to simply go with fate and let relationships transform naturally without trying to violently force an outcome or possess another person.
It's the difference between holding water in an open palm versus trying to squeeze it in a fist.
That's a great way to put it.
But the text doesn't stop at romance. It takes aim at the very concept of kinship and the family unit. That's the fifth confusion.
Yeah, it describes the web of blood and marriage ties as something that essentially turns people into slaves, just running and toiling endlessly to maintain the network.
The psychological concept of enmeshment feels highly relevant here.
Very much so. We often build our entire identities around our familial roles, right? The provider, the dutiful child, the matriarch.
And we convince ourselves that without these exhausting, tightly wound ties, we just couldn't survive, or that our lives would lack meaning.
But the critique is that this hyper-focus on the micro-community of the family creates a massive blind spot.
The phrase used in the essay is missing out on a luminous paradise of wider existence.
Right. By making the family the absolute center of the universe, you miss the opportunity for broader transcendence.
You're so busy managing the daily logistics of your relatives that you forget you are a citizen of the broader cosmos.
Which leads directly into the text's most radical, uncompromising stance, its view on marriage.
Yes, the sixth confusion. And I want to be super clear to you listening. We aren't taking a side here on whether marriage is actually good or bad. We're just unpacking the author's really intense philosophical stance.
Because it is a scorched earth approach. The author literally calls marriage a self-made prison, a deception, and a pit of fire.
A pit of fire. It's wild to unpack the architecture of this argument,
Ah.
because it's not necessarily a critique of finding your partner annoying.
No, it's a structural critique of the institution itself. The text references the theological idea that in the kingdom of heaven there is no marrying and no giving in marriage.
So it frames the act of marriage as a deliberate step away from spiritual liberation.
Exactly. It argues you are willingly jumping into an endless sea of suffering, despite thousands of years of human history providing ample evidence of its tragic potential.
It really forces a hard look at the societal script. I mean, even if you vehemently disagree with a pit of fire characterization, the challenge is undeniable.
Like, why do we make these commitments?
Right. Are we consciously choosing this structure because it genuinely serves our growth? Or are we just wandering in a stupor, fulfilling a societal checklist because everyone else is doing it?
No one blocks our way. We willingly walk into the entanglement.
It's all about your center of gravity. Centering your existence entirely around a spouse or a nuclear family unit creates an incredibly heavy anchor to the material, earthly world.
And if your goal is transcendence, or, just maintaining a light, unburdened spirit, that anchor makes such movement nearly impossible.
You cannot float if you are legally and emotionally bound to maintaining a heavy domestic institution.
It's a profound, energetic trade-off.
Which transitions us perfectly from how we relate to our loved ones to how we relate to the universe at large and to our own egos.
The ultimate existential blind spot.
Exactly. Segment 3. Starting with how we conceptualize life itself, the fourth confusion. The text poses the eternal questions, why are we born? For what?
And it answers them with this beautiful, clarifying metaphor. Life is just a trip to a foreign land.
A brief vacation in the human world.
Yeah, and if you examine human behavior through the lens of a traveler, our actions become entirely absurd.
Totally. I mean, when you visit a hotel in Paris for a weekend, you don't try to permanently claim the furniture.
Right. You don't hoard the towels and drag them around the city.
But in life, we spend our entire existence hoarding. We pack 12 massive suitcases of heavy, useless souvenirs. Property, status, grievances, wealth.
And we drag them through the decades only to inevitably hit the departure gate and realize we can't take a single piece of luggage on the flight back.
It's the ultimate failure of perspective.
The philosophy argues that the true meaning of this brief trip should simply be joy, freedom, and happiness.
Recognizing that we must eventually leave empty-handed, yet still agonizing over our hoarding, it's a massive, life-defining confusion.
It's basically a symptom of terror management.
Right.
We try to control material things because we're inherently terrified of our own transience.
Which feeds right into the final, and perhaps the sharpest critique in the entire framework, our understanding of our own wisdom. The eighth confusion.
There is this brilliant visualization in the text for this. Imagine a herd of cows grazing in a field.
Okay, picturing it.
One cow might puck up its chest, look around at the others, and think, I am definitively the wisest, most experienced, most enlightened cow in this entire pasture.
It's such a funny thought experiment, because from the perspective of a human standing outside the fence, even the absolute smartest cow in the world is, well, still just a cow.
Exactly. Its highest level of intellectual achievement is still pitiable compared to human understanding.
And the philosophy turns that exact same lens back onto us. Among humans, we place immense value on our intellect. We desperately need to be right.
But to the enlightened, or just to the vastness of the universe, even the most brilliant human is still trapped in a profoundly limited, ignorant paradigm.
And that desperate need for certainty is exactly what keeps us trapped in conflict. The text illustrates this by examining human tribalism.
Yeah, specifically looking at religious and philosophical divisions. And again, as impartial reporters of this text, it's fascinating how it lays this out.
It points out this endless recursive cycle of mutual judgment. Like, Christians view Buddhists as fundamentally mistaken.
Buddhists look at Muslims as lacking understanding. Muslims see Taoists as wandering in the dark.
Atheists observe theists and see pure foolishness, while theists look right back at atheists and see an unreasonable blindness to the divine.
Everyone is standing in their own corner, pointing fingers, entirely convinced that they alone possess the objective truth of the universe.
And the text observes this global fighting, this absolute rigid certainty, and identifies it as the pinnacle of confusion.
It's a tragedy of intellectual arrogance. The great irony here is that the tighter you grip your certainty, the more confused you actually are.
Because the need to definitively label your group as right and everyone else as wrong is just the ultimate ego defense mechanism.
Exactly. It blocks any possibility of genuine, open-minded perception.
The moment you think you have the universe completely figured out is the exact moment you've lost the plot.
It really is the ultimate trap.
So we've navigated these incredibly dense foundational layers today. The traps of doing, where our affairs, misdirection, and hustle culture ambitions cause us to drop the kitchen knife.
And the entanglements of attachment, where the dramatic chaos of romance and the heavy anchors of kinship and marriage tie us to the material world.
And finally, the existential blind spots. Our failure to treat life like a brief vacation, and our arrogant assumption that our specific cow pasture holds the ultimate truth.
But beyond these overarching frameworks, the philosophy also acknowledges the day-to-day background noise of lesser confusions.
Right, the stuff that just drains us constantly, the constant pull of lust, the low-level hum of greed.
The petty desires for social power, the obsessive maintenance of a career.
There's a really striking analogy used to describe how humanity operates while drowning in all of this. It compares the majority of people to sleepwalkers.
Wandering through their days muddled and unaware, as if they've been hypnotized or numbed by drugs.
Or, and I find this one incredibly resonant, like young men entirely addicted to all-night computer games.
Oh, that gaming analogy is brilliant. It perfectly captures the visceral reality of cognitive capture.
Yeah, because when someone is deep into a video game, their heart rate spikes, their pupils dilate, they feel genuine rage and triumph.
To them, the digital dragons and the virtual gold are the most important things in the entire universe.
But they are completely oblivious to the physical room they are sitting in.
Or the posture ruining their back, or the sun coming up outside the window.
They are trapped in a maze of delusion, and they are utterly convinced the maze is all there is.
But the philosophy doesn't just leave us stuck in the maze. There is a way to unplug the console.
And what's so compelling is that the cure doesn't require you to abandon your life, move to a monastery, and just stare at a wall.
No, it requires no grand gestures at all. The ultimate antidote to all of these cascading disasters brings us right back to the beginning. The car crash.
The micropause.
The cure is simply a momentary pause. It's about inserting a tiny wedge of consciousness between the stimulus and your response.
The text concludes that if a person simply takes a little care, if they briefly pause to reflect before taking action, they can step outside the hypnosis.
Taking that fraction of a second to actually judge a situation, to ask, is this ambition mine or society's?
Or is this argument actually necessary?
Exactly. Just asking those questions can save us from the labyrinth of delusion and prevent countless pains and regrets.
It's all about breaking the automatic script of the ego. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring this right down to the ground for you, the listener.
Think back to that metaphor of life as a brief trip to a foreign land.
We are all walking through the terminal, and most of us are dragging way too much luggage. What specific souvenir are you currently carrying that is just dead weight?
Maybe it's a massive 5-year career ambition that you don't even genuinely want anymore.
Maybe it's an old argument with a family member that you keep replaying in your head like a broken record. Or maybe it's just a need to prove to someone else that your worldview is the only correct one.
What heavy suitcase could you just leave at the gate today?
The next time you feel that familiar spike of urgency, that rush to make a decision, whether it's firing off an angry email, committing to a massive new project, or just aggressively changing lanes on the highway, remember the driver standing bewildered by the side of the road.
Don't let your explanation for a life half-lived be, I was confused at that moment.
Notice the urge. Take a breath, insert the pause, and see clearly what's actually on the road ahead.